Good afternoon. I'm Dara Bunjon. I'm the food enthusiast here at J More Living. I'm a food writer, food stylist, PR maven, and a frustrated baker. Those of you joining us live, drop your questions into the comment box, and you'll see me turn my head from time to time to check and see. So, any questions for me or my guest? Today's guest is Ori Zohar. He is a social entrepreneur with over 20 years' experience. He's one of Food and Wine's 2021 Game Changers, the Specialty Food Association's 2020 Breakout Talent to Watch, and a speaker at the Fancy Food Show, the Fine Chocolate Institute of America, Columbia University, NYU, and his alma mater, University of Maryland, and more. Ori is co-founder and co-CEO of Burlap and Barrel, the first comprehensive single origin spice company in the United States. Based in New York, the company works directly with its partner farms to source unique, beautiful, traceable spices for professional chefs and home cooks. Let's bring in Ori. Hello, Ori.
Hey, great to be here. Thank you for having me. As a fellow Baltimorean, I'm very excited to be chatting with you.
Yes, for those who don't know, that Ari was born in Israel, came to Baltimore when he's 5 years old, went to University of Maryland, and went away from Baltimore.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a short period of time where my parents, who are still in Baltimore, were like, me and my brother were both in kind of New York at the same time, and then I flew off to San Francisco, and then he flew off to Japan, and then like long story short, my family is scattered across the world at this point.
I'm curious, other than today's show, what else is on your plate to be done?
So actually this Saturday night, my co-founder Ethan and I are going out on a sourcing trip. We're gonna fly to Ethiopia to meet some partner farmers that we work with there for the first time, although we've spent plenty of time with them virtually. And then we're gonna head over to Tanzania. We're working on a brand new spice, or actually non-spice. We're trying to build the business out beyond the world of spices too. And then we're going to go to Zanzibar and Pemba, which is really one of the first partner farmers, like co-ops that we started working with, where they grow their famous Pemba cloves, as well as cinnamon verum, Zanzibar black pepper, and a few other spices that we work with them for. So there's a lot of stuff going on.
Coming up, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's a lot of travel.
Yeah, it's a lot of travel. These trips are really exciting, but farms are always by default. Like you go to a rural place because farms are never right in big cities around airports. So I think it's going to be 15 days that we'll be traveling, and I think it's 12 flights just between all the things that we have to bounce around.
Well, I'm glad I got to you and got you squeezed into the show. And I'm sorry, there was a slight difficulty. We seem to, there's always a technical difficulty with one of these. So thank you for being so patient. Um, Burlap and Barrel started in 2016. Your partner, you mentioned Ethan Frisch. This wasn't your first venture with Ethan. Was Gorilla Ice Cream your first venture with him?
Yeah, that's right. We back in 2010 started an ice cream cart, but Ethan and I were friends even way before that when I first moved to New York straight out of college. And he was cooking incredible meals at his house. He started working in restaurants and great restaurants. And so anytime he was cooking, I was working in advertising at the time, and I would just hang out wherever he was cooking. And then he would, shoot up plates and or sneak me into the kitchen and throw like a steak that they had left over. And so we became kind of friends over the act of eating, over both sides of the table. And after a while, Ethan actually had been kind of promoted into pastry chef of a great restaurant in the Lower East Side, and started making ice cream. And all of a sudden, we started talking about doing some kind of ice cream business together. We said, maybe it's ice cream sandwiches, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. But we ended up starting a company called Gorilla Ice Cream, GUE, like the gorilla, like insurgent, where we had flavors inspired by political movements and revolutions from around the world. And we took kind of those flavors from those countries, from those areas, and put them into the ice cream and told that story. So we had the Libertação after the pro-democracy movement in Guinea-Bissau in Western Africa, and they grow cacao there. And we had chocolate with port wine with frozen bruleed bananas. Like we had fun with it and tried to make interesting and memorable flavors. And we borrowed our cart from the Street Vendor Project, a nonprofit that was helping street vendors across New York City by representing them, often legally. And so they for whatever reason had a little freezer on wheels. We borrowed that, used it for our business, and then every penny of profits that we had from that whole summer went right back to them. And so it was this funny hybrid business that was a social enterprise, but also about a delicious thing, like how much ice cream exists on the streets of New York. Like we got to give it a really interesting and unique take. And we found that people connected a lot more to kind of the flavors of the ice cream than like they didn't sit there and ponder the like geopolitical issues, surrounding the name and happenstance and all that. So we started learning to kind of lead with the flavors and bring people in, and then share kind of the larger mission of the company once they kind of got to taste the ice cream and love it.
But gorillas still exist as a social entity.
So what we decided is when we started Burlap and Barrel, we knew that through all the food businesses, so many people generously gave us their time. We would reach out. We'd say, hey, we're young entrepreneurs. We're trying to learn how to do X, Y, and Z. We've never sold a grocery. We've never set this up. What margins do you need? And so most of our learning was really on the shoulders of people that had been there and had been ahead of us. And we just thought, and we just said, hey, listen, this information isn't proprietary. It isn't secret, but it's really hard to access. And so many times we wished that there were more people that we just kind of like tap on their shoulder and tell us, you're going to do your own version of this, but here's generally how it works. And so we then kept it up as a kind of entrepreneur advice kind of thing, where anytime anyone emails me or Ethan or our company, it gets kind of kicked back to me or Ethan to have these kind of one-on-one entrepreneur talks to just talk about whatever part of the business they have questions about. Maybe it's about merchandising, maybe it's about grocery, maybe it's about payroll, but we're just a totally open book. So we called that program Gorilla Ice Cream, just because it was our little like kind of insurgent way of also just kind of bringing our kind of social activism and our kind of like, we call this kind of like evolution of capitalism to actually be a great product, build something that people want and love and use every day in their kitchen, but is so good because it's a social enterprise, because it's built on these kind of rails that support smallholder farmers, small producers, all these things. So we called that Gorilla Ice Cream, and that's how we kind of kept that business alive through Burlap and Barrel.
Okay. So let's see. Let's talk origins. Burlap and Barrel single origin spice company. Burlap and Barrel is a public benefit company focused on profits, but that there are other stakeholders, such as people and the planet.
Yeah, that's right. We've seen so many companies that are just kind of going to maximize profit, and then they'll like donate some money at the end of the year. They'll have a social program. And we were really inspired by companies like Equal Exchange, or even like Patagonia and Dr. Bronner's. And a lot of these it's a relatively new structure, this PBC, Public Benefit Corporation. And we're really inspired by these companies that were able to connect it. Like Dr. Bronner's goes to such lengths to source the things that end up flavoring their soaps, not flavoring, scenting, that all that. So they really work they worked with Patagonia to make the regenerative organic certification. And so there's something about like, it's so special and it's so wonderful and it's so high quality because of the sourcing practices, because of the way that they work. And so that was really important to us. So when we were building the company, we also wanted to have a kind of legal structure. And for those who don't know, Public Benefit Corporation is still a corporation, still a for-profit company, but one that has a public benefit that you are legally obligated to support to the same extent as maximizing profits, right? All corporations have a fiduciary responsibility where you're supposed to maximize profits for shareholders, right? So we have a second and equally important public benefit. And for us, it's connecting smallholder farmers to high value markets. And so we work with them to say, how can you, instead of selling into the commodity market, how can we work with you to pay you 3 times, 5 times, 10 times what the commodity market is paying, by kind of setting you up as your own entrepreneur that's able to not only grow the spices, and instead of selling to the commodity, our partner farmers are cleaning and drying and grinding and preparing for export. And in some cases also making blends according to their own traditional recipes. And so all those things are really important value added things that the farmers can do. But what it also means is that normally other parties do each of these things. And so instead of it going to this person, and then that person does to that person who cleans, and that person grinds, and then that person blends, it instead all that value gets to stay with the original farmer, and they're able to make a lot more money. We're able to get a really incredible quality spice that didn't have all these stops all along the way from the farm all the way to us.
Right. There was some people know that I have a spice background. I worked for about 5 years for a company that does pretty much private label, and they were pretty high quality, quite different from the major brands that you see. So I learned. And there are so many people in between before that spice gets to you. And because you're direct, that cinnamon might not be sitting there for a year before it gets to you, the packer, whatever it might be. And it would come into New York, and they would grade the spices. If I'm remembering, we're saying 20 years ago, this brain isn't too swift
It's
anymore.
exactly the same. Like nothing has changed with the larger spice industry.
So they grade it. So the poor spices, the grade double D X, which is the worst, that's your dollar spice that you're buying in the dollar store. You're not getting all spices. There are other accoutrements that come with it. When they're laid out in the sun, I'm telling your story here. But I remember when I was working at the spice company, they would bring in, it was all judged by weight. And you think about oregano or thyme, they're very lightweight. It's hard to gauge it. That I want to say a jack, but like an auto jack, but more like an anvil. An anvil was in the center of all this oregano that got shipped in to fake the weight.
I believe it. And there's even a lot of like more, I don't know if it's innocuous or what, but there's so much like origin obfuscation, even like the majority of Spanish saffron isn't grown in Spain, but it just goes through Spain to get kind of repacked and then sold off again. We just keep seeing things. There was recently a scare of where cinnamon was testing positive for lead because somebody had used a lead-based paint to add weight to it and to like make more money off of their things. And so the spice industry has really been quite a black box for most people. And you'll even see in some places that have like, I've seen it at places where they require like origin. You'll see like black peppercorns, and the country of origin is 5 countries. They're like, yeah, it's Vietnam, it's Brazil, it's also India. And it's like, oh my God, we don't even know where it came from. And so I think that's where the opportunity is. And you look at the rest of your kitchen, like you can get meat directly from your butcher, right? And you even can trace it back to your like cattle rancher. You can get your produce from farmers markets. We know where coffee and tea and chocolate come from. There's been this big revolution around single origin in the rest of our kitchens and in the rest of our pantries and how we cook. But I've worked with chefs at Michelin star restaurants. We do spice trainings and things like that. And I have to say that like even these incredible chefs, many of them, the spices are still treated as pure commodities. So that's what we're trying to change with how people cook. And the other point is that it's only a few cents per serving of like making your meals way, way better and making like really giving you access to incredible flavors.
Well, the history of spices goes back millenniums. And I remember, I believe it was people were paid in salt.
Yeah.
And so that the slaves wouldn't steal, they would sew their pockets.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember, these bits and pieces are floating back, but there's such a story to this that salt and pepper were more important than gold.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, salary comes from the origin of the word salt, right? That's how you were paid. There's so many stories about the history of spices. I mean, what has driven more of like terrible colonial activities in search of spices, right? Why did the Dutch East India get into ships? Was like everything was to find spices. And they even said the island of Manhattan was traded for the location of a nutmeg growing set of islands somewhere in like the Indonesia area. And so humanity has really gone to great lengths to secure spices and to find these. I mean, there was the Silk Road, even millennia before even any Europeans got into boats and to search for these spices. And so the trade of all these foods, but in particular spices, were the highest value thing. We went to such great lengths and committed also such atrocities in search of it. And so the history of civilization and humanity is very closely tied together with seeking out spices and flavor. But the big difference is that, like, I don't know, like, I think we still don't know that much. And I wanted to show you this. I brought a prop, but
Okay.
look at this thing here. This is
Is
cinnamon.
is that cassia or is that cinnamon?
So this is a Vietnamese variety of cinnamon. That's, I know there's a cinnamon verum, which is the right, and then which is the classic. It's from Sri Lanka originally. We bring it in from Zanzibar, which is the cinnamon that's less sweet, more citrusy, better for savory food, where cinnamon won't dominate. Then cassia is the main variety of cinnamon that's grown in the world, and it's around kind of mostly in
Every
China.
grocery store. Yeah.
Yeah, and in the grocery, and then this is the Vietnamese version, which is a kind of close relative of cassia. But like, people don't connect their cinnamon back to tree bark, and we bring in cinnamon from Vietnam. That's trees that are 15 years old, that literally parents plant, that children harvest, and it's really much more of coming out of an agroforestry system rather than these, like, what you think of as a farm, right? That's like rows and rows of crops. It's really this like place where cinnamon trees are growing, and sometimes in Zanzibar, like, vanilla vines are climbing up them, and clove trees are in between. And it's all this really beautiful thing, but people don't connect their spices back to a plant, back to seasonality, back to harvest. And that's what we're trying to kind of break that a little bit for folks, to start thinking about how peppercorns are just the fruit of a climbing vine, and it grows in bunches like grapes, and it's so cool. And we think that there's so much to get into, that people are just starting to wrap their heads around.
Well, I'm going to show. I was going to do the wild mountain cumin. You were nice enough to send me some of the spices.
Yeah.
And this is, where are we? There we go. I'm turning it. There we go.
Yeah. That's our
And
wonderful
you
cinnamon.
give flavor profiles. I'm trying to find the glasses. I need readers now. But most people, what you're getting in the grocery stores is cassia, and it's not quite true. It's not true cinnamon. And this is what they call true. There is a true cinnamon.
Yeah.
There's a Vietnamese cinnamon. They have different things, but it's not cassia.
Yeah.
But you put the romance on there. You put the story on there. Our royal cinnamon has been harvested in the mountains around ancient Vietnamese capital city of Hue for centuries. The story's there. How to best use it. Your wild mountain cumin, this started it.
Yeah. Yeah.
This
Absolutely.
started it.
So,
and I will tell people, I got the bag, and inside the bag was the box, and I cut the bag, and the aroma of the spices hit me in the face. I can tell you, I can smell it from here in this jar. It's tightly shut. This is some kind of cumin, some kind of cinnamon, and I know spices because I lived with it for 5 years on my clothes in my car. So that I know. So let's tell the cumin story.
yeah, happy to. And also, I want to hear also how you cook with spices and what place these have taken in your kitchen too. But I'll tell you that the cumin, my co-founder Ethan, was so after Gorilla Ice Cream, to pick up that story, I went off to San Francisco and started. I had an opportunity to start a venture-backed mortgage company. I thought maybe that, like, nobody knows what APR points, whatever, it doesn't matter. Spent 4 years kind of cutting my teeth as an entrepreneur, learning how to do that. And that was really helpful and informative, but also told me that I never wanted to have investors again. It was really a challenging up and down. But in that time, Ethan went and got his master's in international development at SOAS in London. And then he moved to Afghanistan as an aid worker. And so he was working there, and every so often he'd be able to fly back home. And when he flew back home, he would bring back all of his favorite things. And that was dried fruit, that was nuts, but also this wild mountain cumin. And it's actually botanically distinct from the typical cumin that we know. This is called often like black cumin, smaller seeds, more fragrant, a little bit softer. You don't need to grind it really. It kind of melts into the dishes that you cook with it. And his chef buddies were losing their minds and said, this cumin, like, I'll buy it from you. Like, how much can you bring back on your next trip? And so at some point, he kind of rang me up and said, we've been talking about what the next business would be, because we both, Ethan is the kind of culinary product development kind of side of the house. I'm the kind of business and operations side of the house. And so we were just kicking around ideas, and he said, I got it. And he's like, these chefs keep asking me to buy more spices, and I'm so surprised that even chefs at great restaurants don't have access to this, or that something that he brought in his backpack could blow their minds in such a way. But then again, we all travel around the world. And when we travel around the world, we often bring back spices or other little food things, to bring back the memory with us, but also because they're really phenomenal at the origin. So we started working and setting up a kind of very informal export network in Afghanistan, because it grows wild in the northern mountains of Badakhshan, and it's foraged. It's literally picked by hand by these foragers and then transported back down to Kabul, and then often on a flight out of there. And so, but since the Taliban took over, it's been a lot harder to manage the whole supply chain. But we still found informal ways to get money into Afghanistan and ways to get cumin out of Afghanistan, because we, aside from just now that we just absolutely love this cumin and it's one of our best sellers, we also wanted to get the money back into Afghanistan at a time where it's particularly difficult to make a living.
Yeah. Well, the spices that we're talking about, the wild mountain cumin, the royal cinnamon, I'm losing my notes here that are taped up, Zanzibar black peppercorns.
Yeah.
What you sent me was the shark box.
Oh, nice. Yeah. We were on Shark Tank in April, which was a whole trip and a wonderful thing for our business. Because 4 million people watch Shark Tank live. And aside from my mother watching Shark Tank all the time and being like, well, here's what the shark said today, and I think it applies to your business. We ended up applying and going on it. So I thought you'd get a kick out of that. But we picked 4 spices for the sharks to go on air. And then you don't know if it's going to air or not until 3 weeks before. So we had to pre-pack and get ready and all this and that. But it aired, and 4 million people watch it live. And we had our best day of sales ever in the company, between 8 p.m. and midnight on Friday night on April 7th. And so anyways, I wanted you to get a little taste of kind of some of the spices that we put in front of the sharks. But you were holding the black lime. Did you get a chance to try the black lime?
Oh, yeah. I put it on. I've gotten into like avocado toast in the morning.
Yeah.
I do scrambled eggs with mushrooms, sliced avocado, coarse sea salt. And since this has that acid, which will break the richness of the avocado, so I sprinkled some of that.
Yeah,
it's
it
great.
Sounds like a great breakfast, Dara. You let me know when I can come over. But the black lime is also a really interesting sourcing story. We went to Guatemala a couple of years ago, but Guatemala became the largest exporter of cardamom in the world. And what was interesting about that is India grows more, but a lot of it is consumed domestically, and there's lots of restrictions placed on export. So a handful of coffee farmers in the early 1900s said, what else grows well here? And they tried cardamom, and it grew really, really well. And it turns out there's huge communities, both Indian communities around the world where cardamom is a core spice, and also in the Middle East, cardamom and coffee just go well together really beautifully. And so there were a lot of Middle Eastern customers buying cardamom from Guatemala. And at some point they said, hey, will you grow some other spices that we use? And so some of the traders and buyers came over there and showed them how to make black lime. And so that's really Persian lime, or Omani lime, you may have heard it as, but it's one of the core ingredients for Persian cuisine, where you'll have a whole black lime that looks like a ping pong ball. And then it oxidizes as it dries, the skin turns black, and then you'll just drop a whole black lime into a roast or into a soup or something like that. And so they were already producing these black limes and preserving them and drying them in the traditional methods. And we started working with the salad chain Sweetgreen, and they were making a kind of new squash-based salad. They wanted ground black lime. They asked us if we could get it. We looked around, we asked everyone, and our partner farmers in Guatemala said, actually, we make this here too. And so we got it from them. We got them to grind it into a powder. We had a little bit left over, and we put it on the site, and it instantly became one of our best-selling spices. And we just couldn't believe it. But like you taste it, it's sour, tart, acidic, but also like a little bit savory and wonderful. And so I tell people to use it anywhere you'd use lemon juice or lime juice. It's really beautiful there. It's also great on snickerdoodle cookies.
I'm just going to look at the notes.
Yeah.
Tasting notes: citrus peel, Sauvignon Blanc, and
Yeah.
leather. I haven't tasted leather recently, but if you say so.
We try to, like, like, I don't know, we try to have a little fun with it. I know that, like, wine tasting notes are always, like out there and all over the place. But we're trying to have some fun. We're trying to, like, bring you back to the farm and bring you back to the original flavor of the spice, and kind of draw a picture with all of it to make it a little bit easier for you to kind of come over and step into our world and start
Right.
cooking with our spices.
Maya Kamel was on the show.
Oh yeah.
Let's see, 10 weeks ago, 12 weeks ago, something like that. And she talked about the uptick when COVID hit and people got more into cooking. And I saw that, Burlap and Barrel went through that same upsurge,
Yeah.
but your people have remained.
Yeah. That
People are still buying and you're still innovating. When they say that, you're bringing in new spices that most people might not know of.
yeah.
So some I know that were, very little people knew about. That was the dried cherry pit. Malab, is that
Oh
it?
yeah, malab. Yeah.
Malab.
Yeah.
And mango. What's the
Yeah.
mango?
The amchur.
The Amchur powder, which
Yeah.
is that also that tart sweet.
Yeah.
Um, Everything, and that's sort of like the sumac, that it falls sort of into those
Yeah.
categories.
Totally.
So Maya was saying uptick, you went through the uptick. Um, let's talk a little bit back about Ethan, because he worked as a line cook in restaurants and he worked at Tabla.
Yeah.
Floyd Cardoz, a fabulous, fabulous Indian chef who unfortunately didn't make it through COVID.
Yeah.
He had been in India, came home, and passed. But Tabla mm, opened the eyes to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people about spices. And I think that was one of the reasons why Ethan wanted to go in there and work with him.
Yeah. Absolutely. He was an
And
icon in New York, and really, like proved the point that I think at a time where people didn't think of, in the US, just didn't think of Indian food as high end. He was like, I will show you exactly what high end Indian food looks like. And man, not only did he make magic with the dishes and in the restaurants, but I've never met a person that was more, like, just widely respected. Chefs have such a reputation for being harsh and difficult and all that, and Floyd had the exact opposite reputation, where he helped and he was warm and he set up so many people's careers. And we still know so many people across New York that really cut their teeth in his kitchens and then went off to do really amazing things, open new restaurants, and really build the New York food scene in really important ways, all thanks to that kind of springboard that they got through his
Sure.
kitchens.
Well, Ethan wanted to learn more about spices, which he did. And then he put together this book, which you can find everything online. It's called From Grind to Garnish 13 Fundamental Techniques for Cooking with Spices, from toasting them to
Yeah.
grinding them to tempering them to making a paste to blooming them. And I tell you, go online. You'd be surprised what you can just do with your own pepper at home. I
Yeah.
still have I still have some Uferbeber from
Oh,
Vance.
hey, we can get you some fresh Urfa chili. No problem.
I was looking at that, and that's one of those things I like to. You were asking about recipes.
Yeah.
I like to take some oil and put in a lot of, pimenta espelette, Uferbeber, um, just different flavors of that piment, of that pepper in there, and onion powder, and toss my potatoes in that and fry it up.
Beautiful.
And that's where the Uferbeber would go. But you call it, what do you call it?
We call it black Urfa chili. So for everyone that's unfamiliar, black Urfa chili or Urfa biber is a Turkish spice. It's very similar to Aleppo except in the Aleppo chili, which still is mostly grown in Turkey these days since the war in Syria. In the town of Urfa, they would kind of dry it under these tarps, and the chilies, instead of just sun drying into these like nice chili flakes, they would kind of cook in their own juices and turn black and get these like tobacco-y, chocolatey, roasty flavors. And it's one of the most interesting and beautiful chilies that I've ever tried. And so, Dara, you're absolutely right. Like it's just, I like what you're saying, where like for people that think about cooking with spices are like, I need to learn a new cuisine. Like what do I do with amchur, which is this like, it's this like green mango powder, salted green mango powder. It's really tart and bright and a little bit tropical. And so people say, great, well, let me now look up recipes. Okay, now I need to learn how to do this style of Indian cuisine or that style of this. And it's like, just put it on your fried eggs. Just take some potatoes, toss them in some kind of fat, and then just put whatever spices you want on them. Like don't put too many like blocks in front of you. Just do your favorite recipe and start mixing in the spices, and you'll be really happy.
Right. The Uferbiber doesn't really come in the powder form. At least what I had looked like little round nuggets.
Yeah.
Tiny, 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 tiny
Yeah.
nuggets.
Yeah, it's deeply delicious, and they put a little bit of sunflower oil typically in it to just kind of end the kind of like fermentation kind of curing process that it goes through and kind of stabilize it. So it can feel a little bit like a wet chili, but it's just a little bit of oil. It's literally like, I think like 1% by weight or something very light like that to just kind of stabilize it.
I don't want to be remiss. Anything you want to find out about Burlap and Barrel is Facebook, the website, Burlap and Barrel. Spell the word "and" out. Burlap and Barrel. The information is up in the comment sections, but go to the website. There is so much to see. There's a spice club. You have a playlist of music that they can get on Spotify while they're cooking or entertaining. You've put together different songs. There is so much to be had on that website. And as I said, from grind, there we go.
Yeah, from grind to
can
garnish,
find that up
email
there.
us and we'll send you a copy if you want it. Like, we're just happy. People were asking us, how do I cook with these spices? Like, I like your spices, but like, how do I use them in my day to day? So we put together this book about it. And just one other fun thing, if I may, is we have these little spice passports. And so what these spice passports are is we have 8 a half teaspoon samples of 8 of our best selling spices, and we sell this for $10. But as you can see here, you kind of, each one of these is a single use. This is our Cobanero chili flakes. These look like little Nespresso pods, and you can kind of tear the top off and use it. Great for travel, great for gifting, or just great for trying 8 different spices in one shot. And so that's another fun place to start. And Dara, you mentioned the Floyd Cardoz masalas too, like you said. And so Floyd Cardoz, our connection with him is that we'd started working on a project with him and actually mostly his wife, Barca, prior to him passing away, about making initially 3, and then we expanded it to 6 masalas, spice blends based on his cooking and his restaurants. And we donate $1 from every jar sold to a charity that we work with Barca, his wife, to choose. And those have been some of our absolute favorites, best-selling spices ever. So if you don't want to buy single spices, these are really thoughtfully blended for different recipes, so you can use that. So I'm glad. Thank you for bringing that up. And we were really close with him, and we're very honored to kind of keep his memory alive through this kind of.
So you do the collaboration, which actually came out on Shark Tank.
Yeah.
And however, the funds, there's a certain sharing thereof rather than just doing a plain private label, and you help market it and sell it as well as Barca will do. So if you want some really fabulous Indian spices, you want to get them on Burlap and Barrel's site. You will find it there. Let's see. Oh, let's talk about the bear. How did they get your spices on that show?
I'll tell you, we were as surprised as anybody else to find our spices on there. So in the first season of The Bear, if for those that watch, they keep zooming into the clock that tells them kind of where they are relative to service and all that. And there's a food service container of our desert hibiscus sitting right under that clock. And so we were surprised. And so I reached out to the culinary producer, Courtney, who is the sister of the main producer, director, writer of the
Maddie.
Bear, and said that, like, we don't know if, I don't know if you're the right person to thank, but really thank you for this. I talked to other folks, the people that made the tomato sauce. I won't give any spoilers, but the tomato sauce people were also surprised that to see their stuff so prominently featured in the show. And so we were really grateful and really happy. We said, hey, let's make a Chicago beef spice blend. They said, no, thank you. But they did order more spice for the second season. So you can see it in Carmi's apartment and in a couple other just places kind of interspersed throughout the show. But it was wonderful and unexpected. And I think that people that didn't know us didn't notice it. And the people that knew us and were eagle-eyed could kind of spot our stuff being on
Spot it, yeah. Because usually product placement costs an arm and a leg. So the fact that they did it and you didn't have to pay and it was there. I have to say, the best acting I have ever seen was the Christmas season 2, the Christmas season, the 7 Fishes and the kitchen. I was so anxiety ridden by the time it was done. So people, if you can find it, FX, The Bear.
The Bear is great. And I'll tell you, we started our company selling to restaurants. Really, that was the first validation from that first memory of chefs being like, hey, I'll buy this if you can bring it in. And so we started, we're still 11 Madison Park, the 3 Michelin star restaurant is still a customer. We work with Sweet Green. We work with a lot of restaurants. Actually, in Baltimore, Chef Spike that has Woodbury Kitchen was also a customer of ours, just understanding that there are local ingredients that you can get. But if you can't, then use well-sourced international ingredients. And so we've had a lot of really strong connections with the culinary world and with the restaurant world. And so we were really happy that it made sense for the producers of The Bear being like, wait, what do we put on this like restaurant's shelf? And they came to our spices. So we were surprised by it, but we were really, I don't know, it was really an honor that that they thought that we would fit in among, the shelf of such a heavy duty restaurant.
Well, it didn't hurt on Shark Tank when Gwyneth Paltrow, who's known to have like a cooking show and Goop, whatever, saying it was the most amazing cinnamon that she's ever eaten.
Yeah, so. She also said that she didn't hear about us, and we were offended by that because Goop has written about us a couple times.
I guess she doesn't read her own magazine. Yeah. I had something that I wanted to say, but like anything else in my life.
Yeah, I get it.
Oh, okay. So you asked me what I cook with in spices,
Yeah, do you have any indispensable spices or any classic dishes that are really your signature dishes?
You know what? I do I do the same dinner. I just rotate the guest when I entertain.
Okay.
I do a prime rib dinner, and herbs de Provence is the key ingredient on there, with freshly ground pepper and freshly ground sea salt and good quality olive oil, and it's all rubbed. So that's not my signature, but that's what I do. When I'm cooking, it's just for me. I go, what do I have here? And like you've said, keep it by the stove. They used to say, don't keep it by the stove. It's going to ruin the things. But as you said, so you know that I listened, having it in a cupboard halfway down your kitchen, you're not going to use it. So, you sent me the black lime. I happen to love white pepper. I think I have a separate pepper grinder for that. And I like that on certain things instead of the black pepper.
Yeah. Do you know, so first I have herbs de Provence. Are you a lavender in your herbs de Provence or no lavender in your herbs de Provence?
The ones that I used to have Vans, which had lavender in it. That was all gone. So I bought McCormick's.
Yeah. Okay, we're gonna send you some more spices after this. Don't you worry.
Okay. Well, I'm just saying, I like lavender. I don't love lavender.
Yeah.
I don't like
herbs de Provence without it. We went to the farmers in Provence and asked them, and they felt very strongly that lavender doesn't belong there. Who are we to do it? But I know that people are divided on it, so they grow the herbs lavender grows elsewhere. So they also in Provence, but not where their farms are.
Right.
And so they ended up doing it without. Um, but it's also fun. I mean, you talk about Vans, you talk about McCormick, and like Baltimore was the spice capital of America because the Baltimore port was the main port that things would enter into the US, and very few spices are grown domestically, right? Most spices need tropical, subtropical environments. They're not grown kind of domestically. And so things would come in and they would naturally come in through Baltimore for much of the time where Baltimore's port was the really most advanced, most sophisticated port of entry, kind of through the time of like The Wire, TV show. And then the port of New York kind of became the main entry point. But it makes sense why McCormick landed in Baltimore, right? You want to be by the port. You want to be by the point of entry for your product so you can receive it there without having to truck it. It makes sense why Vans is there. But Baltimore has a richer history than most cities with spices because of that proximity to the point of entry into the US, and is the origin of Old Bay,
Right. Ann Wilder used to tell the story. Bruner was the last name, I think. It was sort of, at certain points, there was like a barrel, and people would dump excess this and excess that and excess this, and that's how Old Bay came about. And Bruner went to sell to McCormick. They didn't want it, so he did it, and they eventually paid a lot of money for it later on. But quite a bit. It isn't just that. There's crab seasoning. I'm trying to think of this place. But for those not knowing Baltimore, Old Baltimore before Harbor Place, McCormick had their building there, and you were downtown. You could smell, I think it was probably more the cumin. The cumin was very, very potent in the air. So we probably could talk forever. I think, and we can sit there and play Baltimore geography, but I think I want to ask you my questions that I ask at the end of the show.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
What was the best bite you had all week?
The best bite that I had all week is I just finally got back to New York after spending a couple months in LA, and I went across the street to Larina, like a beautiful kind of northern Italian restaurant, and I can't make pasta at home. Maybe I can, but not like that. And so that was a really beautiful. They make these like little agnolotti, these little like meat filled little raviolis, and it melted my heart.
Okay.
And it has a black lime on it. I'm just saying it's not because of the black lime, but that doesn't hurt it being one of my favorite bites of the week.
Okay. So they have it. If you could go back and give your 18-year-old self a piece of advice, what would it be?
I was always and still am I was always anxious and worried that like who am I to do these things? Who am I to like start a company or go into like do this thing or that thing? All the other things I always kind of tried to push myself into these areas, but I was always very anxious that I had a lot of self-doubt, right? Everyone has imposter syndrome. And so I wish I could kind of sit down the 18-year-old version of myself and just tell him that it's going to be okay and that you'll figure it out and there'll be ups and downs, but really it's going to be okay. And I think that I would love to move forward with that kind of level of confidence through life that I definitely didn't have as an 18-year-old, and just now as a 38-year-old, I'm starting to wrestle down.
That's okay. I'll tell you, you'll get there when you're 70.
That's right.
Trust me, been there. It's like, now I know, it used to be I'd be in the grocery store and there would be a senior, they'd run me over with their food cart and whatever, because you don't care what people think anymore. You just go and do. You just do. If you woke up tomorrow morning with a new talent, what would the new talent be?
I really have been trying to learn how to ferment things. And every time I do something that involves fermentation, I somehow end up making something that I think is poison. And so I haven't mastered it yet. I'm not a good baker. Like you said at the top of the show, I don't understand the chemical reactions, the things that are happening there. I can barely pickle things, but it's such a nutritious, beautiful tool to have in your belt on how to make food more delicious and healthier and more bioavailable. That I I really wish, but maybe I'll wake up next year with that talent if I really work through 2024.
You might have answered the next question with
Yeah,
that.
no.
What was your ultimate culinary fail?
Oh my God. Oh my God. I once tried to make, I decided that I was like, I'm like culinarily ambitious, but like Ethan is the chef in this relationship, you know, my business, like he does the really ambitious stuff. I cook every day. I love it. I feed myself well. But at some point I decided that I was going to try to make soy sauce. I don't know why. It just seemed like the thing, a condiment, maybe shelf stable. And I made these like soy cakes with flour and I kind of set them out to dry. And by the time I got to them, it was just, I think some creatures has gotten to them. There were larvae. It was just, it was a really tragic scene. It took me days to get that smell out of my nostrils before I was like, okay, I just made a pile of compost unintentionally.
Unsuccessful at it.
Yeah, right. Oh my God. So fermentation, yeah, I can keep going. Fermentation fails, but one of these days I'll get it.
You'll get it. You know, it's me. I keep pushing, I keep baking
Yeah,
because I don't want to be a failure. There's certain things that I like to bake. So when
yeah,
I get something that's good, it's like I knock on my neighbor. I don't want to eat all this stuff. You
yeah,
know, at a dinner party, made this key lime cheesecake, and 2/3 of it was left.
yeah.
Just who wants it? Come by. Here we go.
Yeah,
Let's get
I
it. It
tried to make
was,
donuts at home and like by fundamentally not understanding how yeast or gluten work, and I made them with rice flour instead. And what I ended up making is these very firm pucks of dough that failed to rise even a little bit. That went straight to the trash.
yeah. I don't fry because it's too much oil and it's
Yeah,
too much stuff. If it's frying, pan saute, that's fine.
yeah.
Whatever. So, what didn't I ask you that I probably should have?
I like to say this, anytime I get a chance to speak to people like yourself, but I think like people talk about food systems and what's happening in America and nutrition and all that. And I really think that people underestimate how valuable their purchases are. Like you can really vote with your dollars. And so like if you want to make more nutritious food more available, you like early stage companies, like we know every purchase that comes into our site. We talk to our customers. It's so important from a allowing us to exist perspective. So if you believe in better food systems, like that's something that we can do, and you can bring those spices into your cabinet, cook better, and also support this entire supply chains that we create and maintain with independent farmers all over the world. But it really is true with anything. Like if you want like better treatment of animals, like buying more humane meat or go to farmers markets and like really build up their vegetables. And so I think people always underestimate the impact that they can have on really the creation and maintenance and growth of really beautiful food supply chains by just choosing to kind of put their dollars behind them. And so we really appreciate every single purchase. We do everything we can to get it to as quickly and as amazingly and as put fun surprises throughout the whole process. But I think people really have a huge impact in deciding what gets to like exist and what kind of goes out of business.
Before I forget, on my social media post on my Instagram, Sarah Moulton said, "I love B&B, burlap and barrel." She loves burlap and barrel. So,
That's right.
you know,
Well,
that's
we
it
appreciate
might,
it.
it might not be what's it, somebody from the Shark Tank, but if Sarah Moulton says it, it's
Yeah,
gold.
we'll take it. That's a big deal to us. And also, like, I think that really we've seen our main customers, like the best customers. Everyone talks about Gen Z and like TikTok and trends and like that stuff. We find that women in between 50 and 70 are like this very active, very beautiful core of our audience because they know how to cook and they have some confidence in cooking to buy ingredients online. They're cooking a bunch of meals a day for themselves, their friends, their families, all that stuff. And so I actually think that so much of the food revolution is through the power of these wonderful middle-aged ladies much more so than, yeah, sure, the younger generation is making their taste preferences and all that, but the real heavy hitters, the real heavyweights in the ring are I think older than people would typically think, and so we appreciate it very much.
Well, I want to thank you, Ori. Everybody, Burlap and Barrel, just spell the word and. It's not real hard. Instagram, Facebook, website. There's so much to see on the website, and tools, questions can be answered. And Ari said, if you have a question, send them a note. If you're an entrepreneur and you need some assistance, send them a note. And Ari, safe travels. Thank you so much for being on the show. And we did pretty good. We talked a little bit longer than normal, but I love spices, and I'm so happy to see your success continued. Safe travels. Thank you again. And producer will take you out. You don't have to hit anything.
Okay, beautiful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Let's see if he's still awake.
This is what happens. We keep going.
We'll keep going. Until you can, if you see a little button that says leave, you can hit that.
Okay.
There you go. Goodbye, Ori. Thank you. All right, everyone. Next week's show, we're going to be talking Valentine's Day. So I have Gerard Billibeau, and I'm not sure I'm pronouncing it right. He is a French master boulanger and pastry chef, formerly of La Fernille, Le Bec Fin, Le Pete for Bakery in Philadelphia, and has been here in Baltimore at Bonjour Bakery since 1998. So they just celebrated 25 years. And we're going to be talking pastries and Valentine's Day and his background growing up with his family who were bakers. All right, so my food tidbit. A new food trend is spreading on TikTok like wildfire. Bakers on the platform have been wowing viewers by setting their cakes ablaze, resulting in visuals as impressive as a magician's revealed. Called burn away cakes, the confectionery trend has taken off in the past months, with the hashtag burn away cake racking up over 180 million views and counting. Don't try this at home. I think the thing is burn away cakes. All right. They set the top on fire and it melts away, and then there's another vision there. So that's it. Monthly, J Moore Living is giving away $50 gift cards to some of your favorite local restaurants. Visit jmoreliving.com/contest to enter to win. If you need to reach me, you can reach me at food@jmoreliving.com or my Instagram account at Dara Cooks. Give me a follow. All shows are immediately archived in video form on Moore's Facebook page and jmoreliving.com. Feel free to dig into our video archives of past shows. We truly appreciate when you share our show with friends and family. May your plates always remain full, and I will see you next Thursday.